how do we create that right environment where people can show up, do great work, remembering that sometimes we're not always going to be 100% when we show up. And that's why, because we're humans, we talked about that in the last question. So how do we create that environment? What are the fundamentals of getting that right?
Yeah. So there's a concept that I think a lot of people will have heard about, psychological safety.
Yeah.
And this was born very much from, there was a professor at Harvard who coined this phrase, and she was called Edmondson, and she was Angela Edmondson. She was talking about how if people feel that they have a safe environment where they're properly supported and listened to, and they can collaborate around a problem, they can share their fears, they can share their ideas, they can be challenged openly and come to a conclusion where they can see the next way forward for them, that you can learn so much, you're able to be motivated, and people's creativity flies because they don't feel they're going to be blamed, they're going to be belittled, there's not a toxic environment around them. They're just supported, and there's compassion and real vulnerability in that moment as well when you're trying to create and solve these problems. So when she talked about this, the business community really started getting interested in it. And I think it's a concept that is grounded in trust. And when we think about, you just think about anything that you're doing, if you feel that you're with people that you can trust, whether it's a colleague, your boss, whatever, then you're in a very different mental place. You're not fearful, you're not anxious, you're thinking creatively, you feel confident, all of those things. So it's the practical elements of building that psychological safety between a boss and a teammate, your colleagues, and also the organisation that is absolutely critical. And I think, trust is quite a nebulous issue. And, when you try to say, right, what does trust break down to? There are things that you can create when you're wanting to build on trust.
It's interesting you talked about trust, actually. Psychological safety is directly linked to trust. And I think that is more incumbent than ever based on what's happened and the erosion of trust in all of public life that's been happening. And I think we need to face into that you have an opportunity and as well as a responsibility to engender trust and safety for your people. And in doing so, you create a home, which is what home is. And I know I'm using family and children analogies, but I think it's easier to use that as a way of understanding is that having that feeling of safety and trust in your home, and therefore if you create that at work, allows people to flourish. And I think they're crying out for some of that, because a lot of what we're hearing and seeing is the opposite.
It's because there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about so much that's gone wrong, or that we've not intervened at the right point. There's a lot of blame that exists, politically at the moment, and that external environment where we're looking out to the world around where are the grown-ups, who we're looking up at, people that are leading our the businesses that we work with, and the government, the political system. There's this how we're being led, and rather than how we're moving forward. At the moment, the narrative is a lot around blame.
Yes, and that is so destructive with trust. So this concept, and this is what Amy Edmondson talks about, this concept of non-judgment, no blame. So be curious. Be curious about what's going on. Absolutely, no judgment. And if you have a blame culture, that completely shatters any kind of creativity or trust that you have with the team, and people just withdraw. And
it limits innovation. People's willingness to show up, that vulnerability, that psychological safety is like immediately gone. Right? There's and that's that bit around with creating the safe space. to show up and be humans.
Yeah.
But if that, if we don't feel that there's a trusted or that respect, the mutual respect, then we're not really going to do what we're being asked to do.
And that starts at the top. That starts with leadership. It's something that gets talked about. I'm sure Catherine's understood this, and it's written as well. People don't leave organisations; they leave poor managers and leaders.
Yeah.
So the name on the door, and this is where I feel, even in 20 plus years, we've not got to grips with the fact that people aren't drawn to your narrative of the organisation and what it is and and the constructs of it. They're drawn to, who am I working for and with?
Yeah, yeah.
And how do I feel?
Yeah.
I've talked about this before, I think, and I read this in a book, and it makes perfect sense to me. Like, very often on this book, it's about persuasion. It says that people will forget what you said and what you did, but they won't forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
That's
So
the bit
right.
we carry.
Yes.
That's what we carry. We carry that with us. Now, if you look back on your career and your career and think about that, you probably understand what I mean. You can probably forget a lot of things you heard in meetings that were said to you in narratives or what you've read or seen happen. But I bet you don't forget how you felt at certain places and certain times in your
And you know why
life.
there is that? Is because there's, that trust has been created, the psychological safety is there, but there's a humility in just acknowledging that we don't always have the answers. That, there's a level of exploration, especially when we don't know where we're going or where. But from a leadership perspective, if you demonstrate that humility, that builds a trust, that builds a psychological safety. There's just a transparency that should exist there, regardless of where hierarchy, around we're in it together in this organisation. We're coming together as a community, and we've got a problem or an opportunity that we want to meet.
Yeah.
And it's just there's a hierarchy which kind of denotes a level of leadership and how we progress. We need that. We need somebody to kind of say, this is the direction of travel, set that vision, set the purpose and where we're going. But the admission that we're all going to work better collectively, where there's a collaborative effort to get stuff done, and we're not always going to get it right, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to where we started, right? That's the
it.
psychological safety, isn't
Yeah.
it? Building the trust, and that it's not always a hierarchical decision. And that's the difference between, I would say, leadership and management, where we're just managing tasks.
Yeah.
We're kind of trying to meet an outcome or an opportunity.
So there's three things.
Three things.
If you want to build psychological safety and you're a leader, don't obsess with building a perfect team. So it's all about, as you say, failing's fine. You admit it, you learn from it, you grow, and you recognise the great work that people are doing.
Yeah.
The second thing is being a real advocate for diversity of thought and in your team, helping people bring all of their different ideas and having a supportive environment to explore those.
Yeah.
No judgment. No judgment. And the last thing is just about good conversation.
Yeah.
So really good human conversation and connection and candour. It's not about being soft and not holding people to account.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, that's what people want. They want you to give them the feedback and guidance because you really care.
Yeah.
But you do it in a supportive way.
Yeah, yeah.
Three things, simple.
Simple. Just need to do it more, remind ourselves. And I think there's just the one thing that I'd add to that is, in any conversation, if we're talking about being humans, it's just understanding how people are. Ask how we are. Ask, and that's so difficult at the minute, or has become even more so between we're doing meetings over like a video call, Zoom, Teams, whatever. You kind of lose that ability to connect as a human. I'd start all of those conversations with how are you?
Yep, absolutely.